Now, let's talk about types of communities. As a community manager, it is important for you to know the different types of communities because that will help you know the different strategies that you need to set up for the success of your community. All right, so in this module, we're going to explore different types of communities that exist in the digital world today. So, by the end of this lesson, you're going to understand the major categories of communities, what purpose each type serves, and how companies, creators, and organizations use them, and finally, how community goals and success metrics differ. So, stay tuned. Now, let's talk about why it matters. One of the most common mistakes new community managers make is trying to apply the same strategy to every community. And if you're watching this video today, this is a sign for you to stop, take a break. The truth is that different communities require completely different strategies. A support community behaves very differently from a creator community, and a product community has different expectations than a hobby community. I know these words are probably familiar because I've mentioned them in the previous episodes. So, understanding the type of community you're managing will help you design better engagement strategies, set the right goals, and measure success correctly. All right, so why do these communities even exist? Before we discuss the different types, it's important to understand why communities exist in the first place. They are created or they exist because people want connection, they want a sense of belonging, they want shared knowledge, they want collaboration, and they want to have an identity. And all of these things is what a community gives to them. Organizations build communities because they want to, retain users and customers. They want to build trust and loyalty. They want to collect direct feedback from the community members who are also users, and they want to reduce support costs. Imagine hiring an entire support team and paying tons of dollars because you want to attend to millions or thousands of customers. So it helps reduce support costs. And then finally, it helps grow brand advocacy. So at their core, communities bring people together around something that they care about. I used the typical scenario in the previous episodes: design. That's something that they care about is what determines the type of community that you will build. So here are some types of communities. There's several categories of communities that community managers typically work with, and here are some of them. There could be more, I'm sure there are more, but here are some of them that I have personally come in contact with. The first one are brand communities, there's product communities, there's creator communities, support communities, open source communities, interest or niche communities, internal or professional communities, industry communities. Now, each of these communities served a different purpose. They attract different members. They measure success differently. So we're going to break that down one after the other. Let's talk about brand communities. A brand community is a community built around a company or brand identity. The members of these kind of communities can join because they love the brand, they use the brand's product, or they just want to connect with other customers. The goal of such communities are to build customer loyalty, strengthen brand identity, encourage advocacy, create emotional connections with customers. And examples of such communities are Sephora Beauty Insider Community, all things beauty, all things makeup. You can find it there. You can get to find people that are interested in, similar topics. There's also the Nike Running Club. Everything has to do with running, everything has to do with fitness. You get to find people who are not just Nike lovers, but they are also fitness enthusiasts. This extends to other brands. There is Beauty Hut, there's Decafor, there's so many other brands out there. Now, these communities encourage members to share their experiences, review their products, post tips, participate in brand discussions. Think of it like you're joining a Nike community and someone posts a new Nike slides that they got or Nike sneakers that they got, and they're like, oh my god, I totally enjoyed running in these. It's gonna make you want to go buy that particular sneakers. If it helps the other person run with ease, you may want to go and buy that particular sneakers to see how effective it would help you run, right? So that's what such communities help do. Success in these kind of communities is often measured through brand loyalty, repeat purchase, customer engagement, advocacy, and word of mouth. The scenario I just gave is an example of word of mouth. Now, there's also product communities. A product community focuses especially on users of a particular product or software platform. So members join because they want to learn how to use that product, discover advanced features, share workflows and tips, solve problems together. And here's why companies build product communities. They're building product communities because they want to improve their product adoption. That is, they want more people to start using their product. They want to collect feature feedback. They want to reduce support tickets, and they want to build power users and champions. They want to build community members or users who don't just stop at using their product on a surface level, but actually go deeper and explore the features. Example of such communities, which I know I have mentioned a couple of episodes before now, the Google community, Notion community, the Figma community for designers, CarryWise for, savings or finance enthusiasts. It's so much more. Now, for Google community, you typically see, Google community pushing Google products. There are lots of products that Google has. So, in such communities, the community members will be required to use and test out different products. They are sharing their ideas. They are talking about the tools they're using, the features they're using, how they're using it, challenges they are going through. Same thing for Notion. Productivity enthusiasts. Companies now use Notion as their landing pages, as their knowledge base, so many things. So each of these communities stand to drive more product adoption. They tend to share, create a sense of belonging where people start sharing their experiences using that product. So in these communities, users tend to share templates, use cases, tutorials, troubleshooting advice, just basically things that help one another move forward in using the product. And here are key metrics that you track in such communities: the product adoption, the events that you're hosting, the activities that you're hosting. How is it helping um, bring in new customers? Then there's a feature usage. You don't just stop at creating an account and starting to use a product. How do you go into the different features that they have to build something more meaningful? And then there's community generated tutorials. A lot of community members, when they feel comfortable using a product, they feel more supported, and then let's say they run into issues that they were able to solve, they tend to start creating content. They tend to start creating tutorials. They say, "Oh, I've come across this issue before. Don't worry, this is how I sorted mine out. You can follow through this tutorial to do the same for yourself." So you tend to see a lot of community generated tutorials or resources. Could be an article. And then finally, there's feedback submission. You know, remember what I said about having to stay in the middle. You're collecting feedback for the organization, and the organization is saying, "Oh, let's say this to them, let's announce this to them," and you're taking it back to the community. All right, and the next one is the creator community. So a creator community forms around an individual creator, an influencer, or a public personality. So some of these examples can include YouTubers, podcasters, authors, educators, streamers. The list is endless, right? But just think of who a creator is in your opinion and building a community around that creator and what they do. Members who typically join such communities join because they want to interact with the creator, or they want to connect with other fans, or they want to have access to exclusive content. So example are YouTuber communities, podcast listener communities. The list is endless. It's so much more out there. And joining creator communities just really help you learn from someone's experience. So don't think of it like it's less important. It's not less important. I think it depends on where you're currently at in your career and where you want to head to. Some of these creators will hire community managers, so it's important that you know these different types of communities before you go into what you want to go into. Now, success in creator communities can be measured by fan engagement, participation, content sharing, community retention. The emotional connection between the creator and the members is extremely important here because at the end of the day, you're going to sell. And if you don't build an emotional connection with the people in your community or with your fan base, who are you selling to? So you need to have this at the back of your mind as a community manager. The next type of community that I'll be exploring is the support community. So support communities exist primarily to help users solve problems together. So instead of relying solely on customer support teams, companies allow members to ask questions, share answers, and exchange solutions. So these kind of communities are strictly for support. There is no shenanigans, trying to post job postings or random games or whatnot. It's strictly for support. You have a question, I can provide the answer, or have come across this, check out this article, things like that. In case you're asking, these are the benefits of for the companies, right? Because it's important you know that as much as we have these different communities, it's also important that you know that the companies are also benefiting. So you're not just building a random community for a company or a brand. First of all, it's to help them reduce support tickets. It's going to create a searchable knowledge base, and it's going to empower experienced users to help others. Let's say a community has been existing since 2023, and this is 2026, and you have a knowledge base. People have been asking questions, people have been going through stuff, they've been sharing, and others have been providing feedback. It's over time, it's going to serve as a knowledge base, because if new people now start joining the community and they come across the same issue, they can go back to resources that had been shared before and they'll be able to sort out their issue. Examples of such communities are the Salesforce Trailblazer community, there's a HubSpot community, there's a Atlassian community, and many of these communities contain thousands of solved problems that help new users quickly find answers. I particularly love Atlassian community because I have been a part of Atlassian community. Every question, every challenge, everything you can ever think of with an Atlassian product, it's already there in the support community. Now, success in support communities is measured by a number of questions asked, response time, peer-to-peer engagement, and the knowledge base growth. And in these kinds of communities, you typically see a thumbs down or a thumbs up emoji that helps other people that are viewing that resource to know if it was helpful to another person or not. There's also the open source communities. Now, open source communities are built around collaboratively developed software or projects. They are open. It means their projects, their software, the code base, everything is out in the open. Anybody can contribute to it. So, unlike other communities, members here are often contributors rather than participants. So you can get to contribute to the code, you can get to contribute to the documentation as a technical writer, you can get to even write articles, create tutorials, fix bugs, work on designs, or even manage the community. So examples of such communities include the Linux community, the Kubernetes community, the Apache Software Foundation projects, and lots more. So if you're interested in managing open source community, you do want to check some of these out. Now, these communities usually have strong governance systems that include contributor guidelines, maintainers, voting processes. So it doesn't mean that you just propose a solution and it gets accepted, or you just fix something and it gets accepted. It goes through a process. It has to be reviewed. There's contributor guidelines. You don't just join an open source project and start contributing. They have different patterns and different ways of doing things. So you always have to pay attention to that. Success for communities like this is usually measured through number of contributors, pull requests and comments, project release, community participation in governance. See, it's a bit different, so you need to dive deeper into that. Now, the next type of community I'm going to be talking about is interest or niche based communities. Now, these communities are built around shared passion or hobbies rather than companies or products. And the members join simply because they enjoy the same interests. So think of things like photography groups, gaming communities, fitness communities, book clubs, anime, there's so many. I am a part of Strava. It's an app that I use to track when I run, and they also have a series of communities on Strava. That's a typical example. So these communities often grow organically and are driven by member conversations. Now, what makes them successful is that they have a shared identity. So I just talked about Strava, which is a runners community. I know there's Nike running community, but there's also Strava, right? And people have their preferences. In communities like this, members feel like they belong because they share the same interests, the same experiences, the same enthusiasm for a topic. And success is usually measured through discussion activity, returning members, content sharing, social connections. For in such communities, you get to see things like challenges. You could have on Strava, for instance, you could have like a 10 kilometer run race or a 10 kilometer, stuff or a 20 kilometer run. They come up with different things like that to keep community members engaged. And they typically do need community managers to manage these communities. So you also need to have that at the back of your mind. Now, there are also other communities like non-profit organizations, education communities, and so much more. Community goals are not universal, and one of the biggest lessons you should learn from this lesson today is that there is no single metric that defines the success of every community. Different communities measure success differently, just like I outlined earlier. So, for example, brand communities measure customer loyalty, product communities measure product adoption, support communities measure resolved questions, creator communities measure engagement with the creator, and then industry communities measure collaboration and partnerships. So this is why every community manager must always start with clear goals. You don't just jump in and start managing a community. You need to know what you're getting into. And I dare add that there are some people that do have certain goals in life, and that's just joining and managing any kind of community that you find out there might hurt you more than you can imagine. There are some people whose career trajectory or say certain applications that they want to put in for later in the future will require them to have experience in managing product-led communities, right? And imagine that that is something you will need in the future and you had spent your entire life managing non-profit organizations or managing creator communities. It's going to hurt you. So make sure you do your research before going into managing any community. And you're definitely going to have access to that mentorship, one-on-one mentorship with me when you subscribe for 3 months on my next page. Don't forget to check the description. Now, here are the key takeaways for this module. I know we have covered a lot, but here are the key things that you need to take back home. Communities come in many forms. They include brand, product, creator support, open source, niche interest, internal or industry communities, and each of these communities have different member motivations, different engagement styles, different success metrics. So getting to understand these differences is essential for building effective community strategies. So I want you to take a moment to think about the following. What type of community do you currently manage? Or what type of community would you like to build? Ask yourself, who are my community members? Why would they join my community? What value would they get? These questions will guide your strategy as a community manager. You can drop your responses in the comments. I'll try to respond to them, or we can thoroughly discuss this when we're having our one on one after you have subscribed.